Hello, Minecrafters and Redstoners. I'm Natanis Likens. How are y'all doing today? Today we are in creative. We're going to do a little bit different video today because there is a particular farm that I built previously on my world and it didn't exactly work right. There was all sorts of issues and all sorts of bugs with it, and I had to tweak it quite a bit, and I eventually did get it up and running, but it didn't work quite the way I wanted it to. It was not self-sustaining, even though the person that originally came up with it claimed that it was self-sustaining. We're here to try and fix some of the issues and make a whole new design for that. Technically, I've already built it. You can see it sort of back there. Ignore the spoiler wall. We've got other builds back there that I didn't want to show until we actually do a new episode on our ongoing series. Today it's all about Redstone and being in creative. So now let's first fix this because I knew I did that, and hopefully you didn't see what was going on back there. So this is the start of a moss farm. And typically what it does is it creates stone, it pushes the stone out to an area that then bone mills some moss to spread the moss. Um, the few problems that I've had with this are the original setup. You can see that I do have a little bit of a change over there. Requires, I believe it was one tick on all these repeaters, and I just realized something. Yep, we got sound turned off. Okay, there we go. So that's the original setup. It's supposed to be one tick on all those. Now, I don't know how that would work on a server, but here in just a regular world, it causes a problem. Yeah. So as you can see, it turned on all this redstone despite what everybody was telling me. That doesn't work. The only fix that I have been able to find for this is putting this on 4 tick delay and then hitting this. However, you are going to see a problem arise, and we'll go over there and look at it here in a second. Ah, yes. Yeah, this is the problem. Even on 4 tick delay, it's causing issues. You can see that we got cobblestone in some places, and then this middle section here isn't even pushing. That is a big problem that I've had, and part of the reason why I had to kind of alter this farm. It doesn't work like advertised. So over here, we got the exact same setup. And we got a little bit more tick delay over here. We added a few more repeaters. But again, this one still has a very similar problem. We're going to let this go for a few seconds. Oh, look at that. So we've got this section here again is not being pushed for some reason. And then we've got cobblestone being made here. And the problem with the cobblestone is it does not get turned into moss. It just stays cobblestone. Okay, so over here, we got another setup where I've really extended the pulse here with a lot more repeaters. And you can see once we start this, just what happens. In fact, I'm going to come up here for this one. And yet again, we've still got this middle section that is not pushing out for some reason. And then we've got more cobblestone being formed. So with all these things going on here, this style of farm has been something that I don't like it. I don't like how it works, and it never really works properly. The other parts being the actual moss creation area, we didn't do that because you pretty much know how that works. It just bone mills some moss. The main thing I wanted to focus on is fixing this problem, and part of it is that sometimes the water doesn't get far enough across in order to create more stone. And really, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. Or in other cases, and I'm sure if we knock some of this out, yeah, you can see that that's just lava there. Well, that's not going to fix that, but you can see that it's also creating cobblestone instead of creating regular stone there. Yeah, so that doesn't work, and I've never liked that. So I've come over here, and first off, I did a little test to see just how far the moss will go, and it seems to be about 3 blocks from wherever you're bone milling in all directions. In this particular example, we didn't go 3 on either of the sides, but back to front, we did go 3. So it seems to be roughly a 7 by 7 area that can get bone milled and turned into moss with all its little bits and bobs. So that being said, the other thing that I don't like about that is I don't like repeater clocks. Like, I don't like these. They really just cause way more lag, and they're always kind of a pain to end up starting. As you can see, we got kind of a simple system here where we got a block on a sticky piston, and then we got a button here just to kickstart it. But again, that's something I don't really like, and I don't see why people keep using that. There is a better alternative, in my opinion. So over here, we've got my setup, and this is a fully functional version. It's not like partial like those are. I just wanted to demonstrate part of the problems with the way that it's creating stone. So over here, we got a little bit different setup going on. As you can see, there are actually 3 channels, and I seem to have missed a whole section here. But yeah, we got 3 channels where stone is getting created, and basically what's going on back here is we've got a water source block that can't touch the lava right there, and one right there, and we're doing just 3 channels here. I've got this set up so that, actually we can get rid of that. We got an on-off switch here, and once I flick that switch, the whole system will start. But first, we got to go and talk about how the system works. And I actually meant to do this already. Hang on one second. Let me grab a couple of things. Need this. Give me that. This way we got a little bit of light down here. And it's good for me for future tweaking of this. So basically what we got going on is right below where the stone gets created, we have an observer that is looking up at it, and it's going to send a signal out through this redstone line. It's going to go in this repeater. That's just to transfer the signal, make sure that it's strong enough to go out. Now, up here, we got 2 different things going on. Both of these are the exact same system. Basically what this does is it turns the double pulse of a observer into a single pulse. And that's what this little system does here. I ended up having to use 4 repeaters on this. For some reason, 3 was too short. Typically, this is done with 3. For whatever reason, I had to use 4 this time around. I don't really know why. So first off, let's go over on this side. So we got the single pulse being created here. It goes over here into this line, which causes the pistons to push. And that's basically what all that does. This line here is just the kickstart system. We're not going to worry about that just yet. Over here, we got the exact same thing going on. It sends a pulse, causes this normal piston to push the redstone over to here, which triggers this redstone line, which goes back into that piston, which pushes the redstone block back across. At the same time, that redstone signal is coming up over here into this section here, into these repeaters. Now, I think I have 8 repeaters there, all set on 4 ticks. We needed a little bit of delay there. But anyway, it goes into this block here that has redstone torches on each side, and as you can see right now, they keep these lines active. That can actually go away. We don't need that. Now, what this does here is this has the waterlogged trapdoors on it, and causes them to come down, which floods this whole area, sending all the items back over into the hoppers down there. Anything that gets like grass, azalea plants, flowering azalea plants, and the moss carpets also get flushed out. At the same time, it triggers this piston, which breaks anything that is already on top of our moss. So any grass, azalea bushes, anything that spawns there, this piston will break automatically. Now, after that happens, and this happens first, then over here we go into this torch. So this one turns off, turning this redstone torch tower on and off. You know how that works. This one turns on, that one turns off, this one turns back on, sends a signal over here, and over here we have another 8 repeater system going on in order to cause the signal to lag just enough behind that the water clears out before the water gets, or so that the water clears out here before it gets flushed again. And then that goes straight into this dispenser here that has bone meal in it, bone milling the moss and causing the moss to spread. And that's basically how that whole system works. And this is our on-off switch. This is how we toggle on and off the entire thing. Right now it's toggled on, so the whole system is turned off. And basically this is no repeater clock at all involved in this. It's all powered by the observers down there. And what that also means is one of the other problems that I found with that setup over there is occasionally moss will spread randomly, and sometimes one of these areas does not get any moss in it, which means that the piston can't push. So basically what happens here instead is that regardless of if there is moss or not, all of the pistons are going to fire and all of the stone is going to get created. There's not going to be gaps in there like what we had going on over there. And it works pretty well. So let's go ahead and flick this lever here and you can see the whole thing in action. And actually, before we do that, we are going to turn the sound back off because it does get quite noisy. Okay, as you can see, the pistons retract, which triggered everything. So first off, let's go over here. As you can see, this pulses, sending that over there, and then it sends the block back. Fairly simple. Now, when that happens, it sends a signal over here, which pushes which activates the pistons, which push out the stone that gets created. Yep, and that's what's happening there. Now at the same time, we got this whole system going over here. So as you can see, that triggers letting down the water. And when the water finally goes away, this triggers creating or using the bone mill, which creates more moss. Yep, you can see that. And there it goes again. And again. And so this works reliably. It's a lot better than the normal one built by whoever made that one. This works a lot more reliably. Now, the other problem I had with this is sustainability. That version just wasn't sustainable. It just did not keep up with creating bone meal to put into the system in order to either create more bone meal or harvest any of the items from this that you possibly want. We got a storage system down here. This one is set up specifically for storing moss blocks. You can do this any way you want by adding more filters there. You could keep the azaleas, you could keep the flowering azaleas, and potentially the seeds or the carpets. However, for my purposes, I was just trying to keep the moss blocks and see if I could make this sustainable. So basically what happens here is the moss gets into this storage system here. And again, you can rearrange this however you want. This is just how I set it up, just to mess around with. That's pretty much all I was doing here. So we got our filter here. It's collecting all the moss, which is going into these chests down here. And as you can see, I've been running it a little bit, trying to test it out and everything. I have not confirmed whether or not what I have done is sustainable. I'm still working on that process. We may have to come back and tweak it a little bit. But yeah, you can see we get a whole bunch of moss in there and some more moss in here. And there is a reason why I wanted moss specifically. We'll get into that in probably a different video at some point. There are some mechanics that I discovered with moss that we're going to see what we can do. I don't know if we're going to make anything that is automated, but we're going to try. Anyway, so the seeds, the azalea bushes, the flowering azalea bushes all go over into here, which goes straight into the composter, making more bone meal that goes back up into the system. As you can see, we have a water elevator here. I should have put glass so you could see that, but I didn't. And up here, and this is what I'm really hoping actually works, we have villagers, specifically farmers up here, collecting carrots. Now there's a couple of different items you could use in these farms. Carrots is an option, potatoes is an option. I don't see the beets. Oh, yep, here's the beets. Beets is an option, and then wheat is also an option. And each one of those presents a different unique different unique problem. Beets, they're going to create seeds, and the farmers are generally going to keep the seeds and everything. I don't want to deal with the seeds, so we weren't going with that. Same problem with the wheat. I don't want to deal with the seeds. Potatoes. We could use potatoes, but then we got the problem of the poisonous potatoes, and that would require a whole new filtered in order to get rid of those. I didn't feel like doing that, so we just went with carrots. Carrots is the most basic food item you could possibly use, and hopefully, I haven't seen it happen yet, but hopefully they throw the carrots at this guy, which then gets collected by the hopper mine carts, goes down into our system down here, and as you can see, we have another composter right there that so far doesn't have anything in it. We'll have to keep an eye on that, see how it works. But yeah, I need to do a little bit of a test on this system and see if it actually works. As you can see, this is eating up bone meal. I'm going to fill that up, and hopefully we can get some more moss down into the system, because I really want to see if this is 100% sustainable. If not, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on the farm portion. There are a couple other options that we could do. One being a cactus farm that I'm tempted to try, or we can potentially do a sugarcane farm. I'm not sure which one's going to be better for our purposes, but we are going to try a couple of different ideas here and see if we can get this to be self-sustaining. Again, the original one that is based on over there, and some of this is based on, just wasn't sustainable. Eventually it would run out of bone meal and the whole process would just stop. Like nothing would work right. Not to mention the problems with the stone creation. So yeah, I think I'm going to set a timer and just leave myself AFK here and see if this actually does work. If not, we're probably going to have to change out these farmers for some other type of farm. I'm not really sure if I want to go with the cactus farm or the sugarcane farm. Either one would probably do the job. I just got to make that decision on which one do I actually want to use. But for now, yeah, we're going to do a little AFK, and I'll come back to you guys. And I don't know, I guess I'm going to try and set a 2-3 hour timer and come back and see what happens. But for now, yeah, that's it. Let's just get this AFK session going. All right, and we are back. So I've been doing a little bit of testing with this, and it does work reliably. The problem is we can't quite keep up with the bone mill, and it has been several hours afterwards. The initial test of the 2 hours yielded some interesting results. You can see we actually went ahead and built a couple of different farms, and we're going to go over those results here in a second. So it has been roughly about 8 hours now since I built this, and I've been AFK up here after building all of this, just to do some testing to see which one of these farms is actually going to be capable of keeping up with our bone meal demand. And right here, we look in here, you can see in the 2 hours we used up 8 stacks and then most of a stack, like 50 out of this one. So that was what was used up in an hour on this farm. Um, I think. Don't hold me to that. So in the 8 hours that we've had all of these running, we've only managed to produce a whopping 3 bone meal from our carrot farm. So that is not going to fly. That's not going to work. Over here, I have a 12 section bamboo farm made up. So there's 12 modules. Well, not 12 modules, but 12 spots in each one of these. And what we've gotten out of 8 hours of AFKing is 16 bone mills. So yeah, not much there. And just shortly after I built that one, I decided I would try and build a cactus farm. So you can see we got a cactus farm here with 5 layers in it. There's 12 per layer. So there's quite a bit of cactus growing. And over here, if we check this one, you can see we've managed to get a stack of 48. Again, not very reliable because this thing is going to eat bone meal, and that's in order to keep up with that much bone meal, this would have to be an enormous cactus farm, and I really don't see the need for something as big as what we're going to need for that. And then I was thinking about it, trying to come up with an answer and figure out exactly what kind of items we could possibly use to make bone meal that isn't just me getting bones and then turning them in. And I thought about it. I was like, I've never made a berry bush farm. So I went ahead, I made this one, and this is probably going to be what I use to see if we can actually get that to be a little bit better. I'm going to have to clear out the villagers and rearrange a few things, but yeah, let's go down here and just check how much bone meal we have gotten in the time frame. And remember, all these have been roughly running about the same amount of time. This one is a little bit newer, so maybe within the last 5 hours I made that one. And yeah, as you can see, we've already got 1 stack and 46. So this berry farm here is already outproducing both the sugarcane farm and the cactus farm. So I'm thinking that a berry farm is what we're gonna need in order to keep up with our bone meal demands for running the moss farm. And part of this also is all because, like I was saying, right now the only thing we're collecting out of this is the moss. We're not saving any of the other stuff. I don't really see a need for it. That is not the purpose of why I am redesigning this farm. Um, for other people, you may want like the azalea bushes, you may want the flowering azaleas, you may want the moss carpets, and who knows, you may want the seeds too. So the idea is I'm trying to find a way that will make this self-sustaining without using up all of the drops that you get from it in order to make more bone meal. And like I said, it looks like the berry farm is the one that's gonna be it. So give me a little bit of time. I'm gonna go and rearrange all of this, and then we'll see if that works, and I'll go over exactly how this works all over again, because I know, we did that earlier, but we might as well do it again in case somebody actually wants to build this version of a moss farm. But yeah, let me get to it, and I'll be right back. Alright, it's the next day, and I've been tinkering around with this, trying to get the production of bone meal to match how fast we're actually using it. And Well, we got some mixed results. So what you see behind me now is 24 modules of sweet berry farms. This may get a little laggy if used on any roll because we have a lot of mine carts going around on each one of these layers. You can see that. And it does produce berries fast enough. The holdup is how fast we can produce bone meal. This does seem to be the most viable option because sweet berries are just pouring in. If we go in here and look, you'll see, yep, two more, one, there's another. Yeah, they are coming in quite fast. Now, compared to some other farms, like let's talk about the composter for a minute because I did look up some information about the composter, and there are varying degrees of how fast something will fill it up. The most notables are the wart blocks, like the nether wart, and I forget what the other one's called. The warped wart blocks and mushroom blocks. Those will fill up a compactor pretty quick, according to what I was looking at. And then down from there, we got baked potatoes and pumpkins were the ones that I noticed the most. You can do melons, but that requires you to turn them into melons. Like you got to put them in the crafting bench and everything and turn them into melons, and that's not an AFK thing. You actually have to physically do something for that. So pumpkins is a good idea. The problem I have with wanting to do a pumpkin farm is one is not very friendly in terms of size. Neither was this. This was me just trying to figure out how to get the sweet berries to, produce fast enough. The other problem is pumpkins are kind of slow in terms of growing, so it's not going to match the speed of which we can produce sweet berries. And sweet berries is on the bottom of the list. It's right there with pumpkin seeds, wheat seeds, and all that stuff. But we can produce them fairly quickly. So that is why we opted for this option. Um, Again, the real holdup here is how fast we can produce bone meal. As you can see, I have split this into two. I actually had it in four, but it was actually taking longer, split into four. I had it at one, or I had just one composter here, and the berries were actually backing up. Like we couldn't use up the berries quick enough to make bone meal. And I think the ratio we had it, because I was sitting there watching it, seeing if we were producing bone meal as quick as we were using it, and not quite. We were almost there. We were using about one, or we were producing about one bone meal to every four that we were making. Sorry, that we were using. We were making one bone meal to every four we were using. With this setup, we're getting closer. We're about one bone meal to every three bone meal that we're using. So we are getting closer. We're very close. Now I imagine if I made a whole nother layer here, it might work. Now, the problem I have with that is this is already a lot of resources that we have used for it. And as you can see, and we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of mine carts going on. So this is going to end up being a lag machine if I go any further with it. Um, the other option is I could just make these modules bigger or have like a single mine cart going through each one of these. One of the things I thought about is having these be modular, so we'd essentially, so if we have this one here, we'd essentially have another one right here, right beside it, and then do it again. and just have multiple rows right along each other. Then we'd come over here, and I'm gonna guess. I haven't done any measurements, so I don't really know where this would actually be. We'd do a whole nother set over here. Ignore that. That's just to demonstrate that we'd have a whole nother row here. Um, so instead of having this like quad build, it'd be like two facing each other, and I don't know, probably 3 or 4. So we could save a little bit of space doing that, and then we could potentially do a lot more modules. The other problem is the foxes. That would take quite a few foxes. As I said, this is a 24 module right here. So that means you'd have to have 1 fox per module, so that's 24 modules. And the foxes themselves also have an interesting problem. And that is when I initially, don't get out please, for now, I may have to destroy this. The foxes themselves, because they are enclosed, that counts as, even with the lighting that we have going on in there, that does count as shadow for them. And one of the things that I learned about the foxes is if there is an armor stand within 12 blocks of them, they will not go to sleep. And that's the first thing that I noticed is this bottom row. When I did the second row, these foxes were up and about, moving around, gathering their berries and everything. However, these down here went to sleep and wouldn't do anything. So I had to look up a little bit of information about foxes, and I found out that the armor stands, will keep them from just going to sleep. So if you go with this method, you are going to need the armor stands back there in order to keep the foxes moving. Just somewhere in here. I decided to put them against the wall there, just so it's coherent and not just in a random spot either. Now, whether or not the foxes can break the armor stands, I don't know. It didn't say. That is curious that one was missing. So, all in all, I do think the berry farm is potentially the best method to go with, simply because of how fast the berries will be produced. Um, Again, I do think that if we went with pumpkins, the pumpkin farm is just not going to be fast enough to keep up with the demand. We'd probably, at this size and scale, we'd probably have, I don't know, potentially 8 to 9 modules that are just equally as tall, and that gets into getting a whole lot of pistons and redstone and repeaters and everything, and it would just be a big headache. I am gonna try it and see if that will potentially work. But yeah, so far our holdup is producing bone meal. We just can't make it fast enough. Now, I did want to talk about these other farms here for a second, because while I have been working on that, these have been going. I did remove the mine carts just a minute ago from these. I'm getting ready to clean this up. I just wanted to do a comparison on this. In the time that this has been running, it has only produced 31 bone meal. Now, that is with only 12 possible points for collecting sugar cane, and sometimes the sugar cane will be a random amount, like we may get 1, we may get 3, we may get 2. It just depends on how much grows and how fast it grows. um, but yeah, in that entire time that it's been running, we've only made 31 bone meal. So unless you make a ridiculously scaled sugarcane farm specifically to make bone meal, I don't see this as viable. And then you got the issue of how many observers you're going to make in order to make something big enough. Like, it's going to be a ridiculous amount. The cactus farm. So with any cactus farm, most people know that there is a chance that the cactus will land on the glass panes, preventing them from getting into the system and either being collected or turned into bone meal, whichever. Uh, if we come down here and look at how much this is produced in roughly the same amount of time, you got to remember I made that one first, made this one, then made that one. So there is going to be a slight variant on how much was actually produced between the three. But this one, yeah, it still hasn't produced that much. We've got 64 and 46 bone meal. I don't think it's that much different from the last time we looked at it. Now, this one does have, I think it was 60 cactuses that I counted up, so you could upscale this even more and possibly keep up with the production demands of bone meal with this version of the moss farm. But again, I feel like the size that you would have to make this at would be ridiculous. That's already between slabs, sand, and cactus, not to mention the glass panes you would need. That's already close to a stack right there, and we're still not meeting the demand of the bone meal. Um, so that's kind of why I went with the berry farm. And we come down here to this one, you can see this has been really producing. So the berries are being produced a lot faster. Now they are going to take, it's going to take more berries to produce one bone meal than it will cactus. And like this is just clearly evident that the berries are being produced much faster because I think it's like you probably need like about 10 cactus roughly to produce one bone meal. I was doing some counting of that earlier and just seeing just how much I had to put into a composter in order to make the bone meal, and it was falling somewhere between 9 and 13 every time. I haven't done that with the berries, and being that the berries are at the bottom of the list and cactus is slightly above it, it should take more berries to produce one bone meal than it does cactus. So we'll just roughly say it's probably about 15, 16 berries to produce one cactus. And as you can see, again, we are producing berries a lot faster than we are cactus. So I do think the berry farm idea is probably going to be the better option as far as how fast we can produce any given item that we can use to make bone meal. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully I was able to explain that quite well. But yeah, that is why we did go with the berry farm. Um, I've still got to do some testing because, clearly, as I said at the beginning of this clip, we're just not producing bone meal fast enough. And that's even with this ridiculous monstrosity of a berry farm. Um, so more to come on that. I'm going to keep playing around with it and see if we can come up with a solution that is both easy on, materials required and easy to build, because this actually is a giant pain in the butt to build, especially considering the size. Now I imagine, like I said, if we did like rows of them, like maybe have 3 of these duplicated on both sides, it'd be a little bit easier. The other real issue I have is the foxes. That's a lot of foxes to have. Yeah, you'd have to go and find quite a few foxes for this. I don't know if bred foxes would even work for this. I think bred foxes work similar to how any of the other pets work, and that they would follow you, so they would just teleport out. I think. I'm not really sure. We can actually test that. I don't know if I need more berries. I don't know if they're going to eat these if I give them to them. Let's go ahead and test this. I can't see you. You know what? I've got the egg on me. Let's just go down here. Let's make a little box. Because I do know that the babies are friendly to the player. Now, let's see here. Are you going to follow and teleport? No. Okay, so you could potentially just breed up all the foxes. Yeah, that he's not teleporting out, so yeah, I was wrong about that. So yeah, you could potentially just get a couple of foxes and breed them up till you have enough to fill in the modules. I'm still not sure how many modules it would actually take in order to keep up with production. Yeah, more to come on that. Let me get back to it. Alright, it's been a couple hours and I've done some work. You'll see some new things over here. And let's get into it. So I made a bigger sugarcane farm. Well, actually, no, it's smaller. Uh, it's still not producing fast enough. It's just not going to work. You'd have to make like an enormous sugarcane farm in order to produce enough bone meal to keep up with the production of a single berry farm. If we go down here and we check it, because it's been running the entire time, it's only gotten up to 6. Again, I was trying to redesign this a little bit and see if we could do something a little more interesting. What is happening here? Oh, it's getting bug powered. So that means that it's probably the same. Yeah. Okay. So a mistake was made there. Why isn't this one? Because we don't have an upper level. Okay. I know how to fix that. I'm not going to worry about it. But over here, I have made my own version of a pumpkin farm. And as you can see, we've got observers looking for the pumpkins to be created. We got pistons that's going to crush the pumpkins. And then we got the whole signaling system back here. Again, this whole setup right here is to turn the double pulse of a observer into a single pulse. And so that's what this whole redstone does. And then it shoots down this line of pistons, which crushes any and all pumpkins that have been produced. And I can somewhat demonstrate this. Yeah, you'll see the entire line lights up and the pumpkin gets smashed. And then there is a hopper or a minecart line under here that is collecting up any and all pumpkins that get dropped. And it does work. It is viable, but much like the sugarcane farm, in order to keep up with how fast a berry farm produces, you'd have to make a lot of these, and that would just start eating up a lot of resources. So sadly, it looks like the berry farm is actually going to be the best. As you can see, we've only managed to produce 12 bone meal since I first made the first layer of this, and then added 3 more layers to it. It's just the growth rate of the pumpkins compared to the berries is just too slow for this to be viable as well. So yeah, it looks like that it's going to have to be a berry farm in order to keep up with the demand of bone meal. Now, sadly, with how much I've actually done here and how many mine carts and everything, we're still not keeping up. I haven't made any more layers because that was just a proof of concept on getting the bone meal production up to par with how much bone meal this is actually using. Uh, it would probably take a few more layers. I'm not really sure how many because as far as I've gone with this, we still can't keep up. It's just not fast enough to keep up with it. Now, this has been running the entire time, and if you recall, I think in the last episode or the last clip I had, the first two lines were basically empty. If we go down here and we look, you can see that we've almost filled this back up. We're getting very close. We're still not completely full on this single chest again, or this double chest, not single, but you know what I meant. Um, so yeah, it does seem like an option. The other thing I was thinking about, and I've got a little setup over here, is I was wondering if we can take a signal from the dispenser and potentially turn off the whole system. As you can see, this dispenser is empty, so it's producing a signal. The thing is, with the way I've got this set up, I'd have to completely redesign this area in order to get a signal off of this block without interfering with the production of moss. I don't think there is a way to rearrange this. So at most, you may want to just skip the farm as a whole and just keep a double chest set up here and fill these up with bone meal. It would be much better if you just had like a mob farm and took all the bone drops from the skeletons and used it to create bone meal and just fill the system up and use it when you've got enough bone meal. I don't see a way of actually keeping up with how much bone meal this uses. So with that being said, it has been a little bit in the videos since we last went over how this all works and the kind of setup that you need to make. So first off, this is our on-off switch. By toggling this on, it pushes these pistons, which turns off the machine completely because there's nothing going on. Now, all these repeaters here are set to a single tick, and once we flip the switch, what is going to happen is that these observers are going to observe the creation of stone. They are then going to hit this line of redstone, send in a signal, and again, we got a single repeater here. That's just because I didn't want the signal strength to deteriorate. So we got a single repeater there going up into this line here, which goes into these two directions. We're going to cover this direction first. So what we got here is a little setup that turns the double signal, the double pulse of a observer into a single pulse. So basically what happens is once those observers send a signal saying, hey, I detect something, it's going to then push this redstone block over, which is going to power on this redstone line. It's going to also power these repeaters here. We'll get into what those do here in a second. And it's going to send a signal over here, which is going to say, hey, pistons, I need you to power on. So the pistons are going to push the stone out of the way. Now, because this block is sitting here, there is going to be a little bit of delay that is going to push out for a little bit. And these repeaters are all set to 4. There are 4 repeaters here. That's because we need to delay the signal just a little bit for that double pulse to happen. So what's going to happen with that double pulse is it's going to push the redstone block over there. This is going to start powering on. Meanwhile, we're going to get another signal because those pistons have pushed. That's going to cause this to push rapidly again, and by the time this signal goes through and over here, that signal coming from here is going to end, and this piston's not going to do anything, giving this piston room to push the redstone block back across. And that is the same thing that is going on here. You can see we got the same thing. This is set up slightly different, so the repeaters here are the ones getting the signal directly. Over here is actually the redstone that is getting the signal directly. And then the basically the same thing happens. So we got 4 repeaters here, all set to 4 ticks. And that's what this system does over here. Now over here, this signal then goes up here, around, and into this chain of repeaters here. There are 8 of them here. Yes, 8. All of them set to 4. Again, we need to cause some delay. So once that happens, it's going to turn off these 2 redstone torches. We'll get into what this one does here in a second. This one then powers off this line here, which opens these trapdoors, allowing the water to flow out and wash away any grass, azalea bushes, azalea flowering bushes, or moss carpets. So they get collected over in those hoppers down there. Now, at the same time, this redstone torch is going to turn on, causing this piston to expand and break any kind of block that may have spawned on this moss block when it got bone milled. Now, after that turns off, this whole sequence goes off. So basically what we got here is a typical redstone torch tower. So this torch gets turned back on as this signal disappears. This torch then turns off, allowing this torch to turn back on. And the whole reason I did it like that is I was having a little bit of trouble with having just a redstone line there. It was kind of buggy at times, so we just went with the torch tower, ended up having to come up one block above. Anyway, so this torch turns back on, turning this redstone signal on. It goes into these two repeaters. These two are set to 4. It goes into this redstone dust, and then we got another line of repeaters here. There are 6 here, so again, a total of 8 repeaters, allowing this signal to actually come after this one. So then this goes down into our dispenser, which dispenses bone meal onto the moss block there. Now, the reason we had to add the delay is to allow the water to disappear. And by the time the water disappears, this activates, causing more moss to be created with the stone below it. And then as soon as that goes off, because of the way this is all set up, another signal comes through, washing away anything, and then this whole sequence just repeats. Again, because of the way the original design works, I wasn't happy with it, and a lot of issues were happening with whether or not we were getting stone. Sometimes we'd be getting cobble in its place, and I did find some workarounds for that, but I just generally wasn't happy with it. So I just decided to come in here and redesign. Now let's talk about where some of the things are. So first off, our lava blocks, our lava source blocks are right here, 2 layers above where the stone gets created. Now we've got this blocked off with crying obsidian. The block that you use for your build really doesn't matter too much as long as it is something that does not get turned into moss by this system over here. It's not going to spread that far. It's just keeping it all in theme and the same style of block. You could use any block that does not turn into moss, so it really doesn't matter. I just went with crying obsidian because I thought it looked cool and I just wanted to experiment with using it. Anyway, so below, so we got the lava source there, 2 things of crying obsidian here, your block of choice, of course, and then our water source down here, same thing over here. And what this means is that the water is always going to get below the lava in order to create stone. Always. With that system over there, it was very buggy, and I didn't like it. There was a lot of times where it just didn't work properly. So we ended up splitting up the sections. Instead of having a 6 area where it's supposed to, we've only got 3, which works a lot better. We always get stone. So yeah, that's how this entire version of this farm works. And that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. One of the main things that I was trying to do here was just reinvent this farm and make it self-sustaining, because again, the version that I found on YouTube just was not self-sustaining. It would eventually run out of bone meal, and it just wasn't creating it fast enough. Even with all the blocks that you were creating, you just couldn't keep up with it. Now, I do imagine that this at some point would be self-sufficient once all these chests of whatever you're collecting is full, so that then for instance, I'm only collecting moss here. Once all these get full and this entire thing backs up, the moss would then be going into this uh, composter right here and creating more bone meal that sends back up into the system. Now, I don't know for sure. I'd actually have to go and fill up all this or just remove some of it to see if we can fill it up and back up the system and see how much bone meal is getting created. The main problem that I was finding, even with the main system here, is that I just couldn't create bone meal fast enough. And I imagine if this starts backflowing with all the different items that you can possibly collect, it may or may not be able to keep up as well. The only solution I've really found to keeping items from backing up is by having two composters that basically create all your bone meal for you. Um, Again, this is all experimental and something I'm just messing with and seeing if I can fix. But I hope you find that useful. I hope you like my version of the moss farm, and maybe give if you end up making it, give me a shout. Let me know. Let me see it on Twitter or whatever. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this little redstone experiment, and maybe you guys have an idea for how I can actually get this to be self-sufficient. Because right now, I don't have a clue. Like, I've tried several different farms in order to create bone meal, and they just, without making them excessively huge, there really isn't a way to keep up with how much bone meal. Now, I do want to reiterate that if you made any of these farms ridiculously big, like, I don't know, with the sugar cane, I imagine you'd probably have to have over 100 modules, and even the size of the modules, I don't really know. I experimented a little bit with the sugar cane. The sugar cane just doesn't seem like it's going to be a viable option at all. Uh, Cactus does seem like a viable option, but again, we would probably, in order to keep up, we would probably have to make this, which has 60 cactuses in it, almost a full stack of cactus. We'd probably have to make about 9 of those. So that's, and if you imagine this as a single stack per farm, that's 9 stacks of cactus, 9 stacks of sand, 9 stacks of slabs. So it there is potential for the cactus to be a viable option. Uh, I just don't feel like making that 9 times, and I'm sure you probably don't either. As far as the berry farm, again, it is the most viable because we do produce berries very fast. However, it is on the bottom of the list as far as what it takes to make bone meal. It is one of the lowest rated items. But again, as my little experiment over here proved, we do produce berries a lot faster than we do anything else. So it is the most, it has the most potential as far as making a farm in order to create bone meal to keep this thing running. But yeah, as you can see, we made quite a big structure. Again, there are 24 modules here, all of which have their own hopper system in it. Um, I think this would, if you made another, I don't know, another 8 modules maybe, it might keep up, but then you've got all of these carts running. And if you have any trouble on a server or anything, that's just going to cause a hassle, and it may even be very laggy. Uh, this is one thing I was trying to avoid. Unfortunately, the berries just they just they grow way too quick for that not to be the best option. Uh, yeah, I'm ranting. Let's just go ahead and end this. I hope you guys enjoyed my little redstone creation. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.